Okay, so basically Speck&Tech is a lovely big community. We are called Speckers, so now you're officially Speckers. And it was all born in 2016. 2016, this means that we will have a big birthday soon. In this room with some chairs empty, but they got filled soon with many people, events after events. We colonialized even Muse and many other spaces around Trentino, such as also the humanities department of the university, and we did many collaborations with the different entities, institutions, speakers from many diverse backgrounds and topics. And also we like to create crazy stuff such as lightnings here in the parking lot. And the reason also why we have tech in our name and also spec is because the networking part at the end of our events is our signature to meet people, engage in some networking and chat with others while drinking something fancy and pleasing. And another key feature of our association is that we are including a very variety of people of any age, backgrounds. So not only the tech people, but also from other backgrounds. So long story short, this is Speck&Tech, and welcome at event 79 Worldwide Walls.
A warm applause.
Our first speaker for tonight will be Simone Basso.
Here.
Here.
And the second speaker will be CARLO PIANA. A warm applause. All right, you might notice on the website of Speck&Tech that there's something like a logo down there of Neutech Park, Bolzano, and some people might say, we are in Trento, we don't speak German, why Bolzano? And Luca Miotto from Neutech Park is here to tell us a bit more, so welcome, and just be careful, listen, it's very interesting, and we've been collaborating for many years now.
Thank you, Francesco. Thank you, Francesco. Thank you, Speck&Tech, for having us here and to continue this collaboration, I think, from 2018, the first time. We are Neutech Park organizing this conference, the South Arrow Free Software Conference. The conference was born in 2001, so it's actually the 25th edition. And it started like a small event with 20, 30 people. And now it's grown to more than 1,000 people last year and 2 full days of conference and other activities. So I will give you a little overview of the event, and then you can go to the website, SFScon.it, to get more information about the program and all the activities. As said, the conference will last 2 days, Friday 7 and Saturday 8. There are a lot of different tracks, a lot of different topics overseen, but of course the main topic is free software, free open source software. And this year we will also have an overarching topic, which is ethics. So everything will be towards this topic. We have different side events as well. We also have an hackathon. I will come back to that after. And we also introduced for the first year some workshop. So you will have not only talks to listen, but also things to work on it and learn and so on. So this could be also interesting for you. And of course, what we also have a lot of partners and that brings knowledge, that brings content to the conference, and also, of course, some supporters. Because one key feature of the SFScon that's also different from other conferences like that in Europe, it's that everything is free of charge. So the participation, and also you will receive food and coffee and so on. And This is possible thanks to our sponsor, to our supporters, among them Telmekom, here represented by Sergio. But there are a lot of supporters that from many years they let us run this conference without asking money to the participant. Of course, the main signed event of the 2 days will be the hackathon. So this year we have a 24-hour hacking from Friday to Saturday. A lot of speakers always participate to the event, and sometimes, well, maybe every time they win something. This year will be even more challenging because we will have only 3 challenges, so 100 participants and 3 challenges, so will be tough. And the supporter that will provide the challenge are Infomines, Converto, and Telmekom again. Right now, actually, the registration for the hackathon are full. We actually have 50 person in waiting list, so we could actually run 2 hackathons probably. But we actually have a tradition here. So if someone from Speck&Tech wants to participate and comes to me after the event with a team, and maybe, yeah, maybe you're gonna show up on 7 November in Bolzano, we cannot say no. Okay, so by the way, if you go to the website also to SFScon, tickets are still available for the conference, so please take a look at the program and subscribe if you wanted to participate, and as well for the hackathon, we can talk about that later. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Luca. Yeah, as said, I think at least 5 or 6 different teams from Speck&Tech over the years won some prizes. Some of us went to San Francisco, just to say, those were the days. But yeah, anyway, if you are here for the first time, especially and you missed all the 78 previous events and more, you can get to our website on Speck&Tech, and you can find all the events since 2016. For every event, we have a single page with the description, the talks, the speakers, and also the slides and the video of the night. So it might also be interesting to put it there and to learn something new about a specific topic. We also have a page of job opportunities. If you want to upgrade your career, find the new job opportunities, looking for an internship, a trainship, whatever, you find them there on jobs, again, on our website. You can stay tuned about what we organize on all our channels at Speck&Tech. The handle is always the same. One final thing before starting, or let's say 2 final things before starting. Tomorrow, at around 7 something, you will receive an email from us saying, how was the night? Be transparent, it's totally anonymous. We gather your feedback, we read them all during our direttivi, and we try to improve little things. This might be a QR code on the registration ticket. It may be the room being too cold or too warm. It may be the beer missing. It may be some food. It may be a talk that is not at the level that you were expecting, etc. We read all of them, be transparent, tell us what you think, and we try to improve our events. During the night, take a photo of this QR code, because here is where we gather the questions. You can go to slide.do/Speck&Tech or Slido and insert the code Speck&Tech. There is where you can ask the questions to the speakers or upvote, downvote the questions from others that will be asked to the speakers. So we are always sure that the questions that we ask are the most interesting, the most clever, etc.
We like democracy.
We like democracy, yeah. No, democracy. Boom. That's it. Ready for the first talk of the night, Simone Basso on stage. Welcome.
Non ti ho capito. Hello. Yeah, I'm clearly audible, and yeah, let's see. Okay, welcome. thank you to the organizers for inviting me. I must say the room is fully packed, which is very intimidating, so I will look somewhere not to be distracted. But um, as I said, as they said, my name is Simone. I'm here to talk to you about these 10 years that I spent working in this field called internet freedom, which broadly means making sure that people can use the internet and access it, which means circumvention. You probably have heard about Tor, the Tor project, for example, and also means measuring what is the current situation in regards to blocking the internet. And my job was mostly about measuring the blocking of the internet. So when I was preparing this talk, which was a great opportunity to reflect on my past life, I realized I actually spent lots of time trying to play ping pong with servers in the internet. So my job was, for a long time, writing software that runs on user devices and tries to communicate with servers, not knowing exactly in which place it will run, in which country, in which network, but knowing that the job was to understand if it was working or not, and if it was not working, why. So that's the general idea. Now, what I'm going to do is basically to tell you a little bit more about my story and what I was doing for this organization called UNI, which means Open Observatory of Network Interference, and for which I worked for those 10 years. And then I will tell you a little bit more why I say there is a field like that. I will go into the details about ways in which the internet can be not working, can be blocked, providing examples, and then I will give you like an idea of not just the technical side, but also the administrative side, what we know that happens in places when there is this order or this decision to block some content on the internet. So um, I want to start with this memory, which is, I guess, my most fond memory of working for this organization. I started in 2014 as a volunteer, and I was in my postdoc, and we were working to do something that eventually kind of defined our journey. Like back then, the kind of work we were doing was to ship and deploy Raspberry Pi devices that were running tests trying to understand is this website blocked, is this website working, etc. But the problem that we had at the time is that this was not scaling well. And because this was not scaling well, we were trying to make a mobile app. So this is a very good memory because during this hackathon in Berlin, it's where we really started making the mobile app work very well for us. And that is what allowed this organization to scale and reach many more users and people. And in fact, what we achieved in those 10 years was creating a user-friendly mobile app and a user-friendly desktop app. Now, those are apps that you can install and that allow you to test various ways in which, from your vantage point, the internet is blocked. The other thing that we did was to create a website that was showing all the measurements that were collected from all those probes worldwide. And the amount of data that we collected is browsable there, so you can go there, you can search for countries, you can try to investigate why a specific measurement was blocked, etc. I left there URLs that you can go to look more in details everything about the work that we did. The software was, of course, open source. The data is published as open data, so we succeeded in creating this kind of pipeline from users running tests in places to information, public data, about how the internet was working in several places. And this is generally like how I was involved. My main job was to work on what we call the measurement engine, which means the code that was responsible for trying to understand stuff like, oh, is this URL, let's take the DNS, is this working as intended? Are we getting a wrong response? Can we do TLS? with this website, etc. I will go more in details later, but yeah, that was my job, and that was what I was doing. Now, I want to take another, like, not even short, the tour, but I wanted to give you an idea of why I call this internet freedom field, how it came to be, and how it all became what we know about today. And the starting point that I'm using here is this historical picture of a treaty called the Peace of Westphalia, which was signed in Europe in 1648. The reason why I'm using this is because this is the moment where, by law, it was decided that states were responsible of implementing the law they wanted within their borders. Now, the world in which we live is not this world. It's more complex. There are declarations, such as the Declaration of Human Rights, and bilateral or multilateral treaties between states that define what it is possible. So it is not that states are really able to do whatever they want. There are some laws there that apply. And this is very important because it defines the framework in which we reason about when we think about internet freedom. The origins of the field mainly is related to people such as Ron Dybert, John Palfrey, etc. They were mostly at the University of Toronto or at the Berkman Center at Harvard. And they started very early in the 2000s to ask the question, is stuff working or not on the internet? And what they did was kind of initiate to create the field, and they did a couple of interesting things. So the first thing they did, they were measuring all the countries that they could. They were not making like preferences. It's like, we want to understand everywhere. We want to understand if countries are trying to block content on the internet or if they are trying to block URLs, like trying to understand exactly what was going on. The other thing they did, which is very interesting, is that they decided they needed to have a pool, a list of things they wanted to measure. So they created these lists of URLs, and nowadays we are still working in this way. We have lists that are thematic. And the topics were mainly politics, so that was the big thing, right? Wanted to understand if a party can have a website in a specific country or not, but there were other topics that matter there. Culture, is a minority allowed to have a website? Is there something trying to block this website or this resource? And then pornography was another aspect that was measured, and religion. So is there the freedom to have websites in a country that are related to religion? So that was what they did at the beginning. And they started and wrote at the end this book, which is their experience, summarized everything. And at that point, it was clear that it was possible to have quantitative measurements. And a way in which they did at the beginning, as I was told, was using the 56K modems to connect to places. And then they were phoning, I don't know, China, and then they were running the measurements towards this connection to try to understand if there were blocks. So yeah, this is what started this field. And then something interesting happened. So there was this very important speech by Hillary Clinton, where basically what she said was, the United States want to defend an open internet. The United States want to use diplomacy to, in a way, encourage, to encourage an open internet, and they are going to pledge some funding to help activists and people to write tools and to build upon what was already done by the previous research I showed you, to create even better tools and make sure people could measure whether there were blocks and could circumvent those blocks if possible. So this basically created the initial conditions to have a bigger and more prosperous field. And then later, in late 2010, early 2011, there were the Arab Springs. And the Arab Springs were the first moment where mass protests used the internet. And the internet was used to spread the message, to coordinate. Let's meet in this square and let's say to the government, we are not happy. And obviously governments reacted. And we are going to see later, when we are entering into how stuff is actually blocked, how they reacted. But they did, because it was kind of dangerous for like an order to allow that. And so they started trying to do stuff. And in particular, if you look into the history of the Tor project, it says many things, but the most important thing that it says there, for the sake of my talk, is the Tor project, actually the Tor browser, which was a tool they developed, was instrumental to allow people to communicate in an anonymous way and to stay safe and to not disclose what they were doing. So obviously, this was kind of another way to respond to the difficulty of actors trying to prevent you from communicating. And this was more like in a cypherpunk fashion, right? So we are going to encrypt everything. We are going to hide who you are and you communicate to. And we are going to use math, basically, to make sure it's not possible to understand what you are doing. And then the result of the US society catching up with those problems was that eventually this fund, which is the Open Technology Fund, and which now is a non-profit corporation, was created. And this fund has been very instrumental in the sense that it provided funding to many, many, many projects, including the Tor project itself, Signal, the encrypted app. But something else happened, and this is in 2013. So you remember the Snowden revelations, right? So the NSA was inspecting and surveilling people. And the impact of this is that the technology world reacted by trying to encrypt everything. So that's when HTTPS everywhere was created, and that's when the web became mostly encrypted or started to do so. And around this time also, WhatsApp implemented end-to-end encryption by using the Signals protocol. Why am I mentioning this? Because this was a huge change for censorship. If you want to censor, at the beginning, intuitively, what do? You have these technologies that can inspect what's passing through the network, and you don't like a keyword. I don't know, foo. You don't like foo? When you see a packet that contains foo, you kill the packet. Easy. But this means that if you are filtering, say, YouTube, you can very precisely block pages that contain foo. You're not blocking the whole of YouTube. If YouTube goes encrypted, suddenly it's much more complex, and you are not able to understand which pages the users are seeing. And this means that censorship moves from blocking content to blocking websites and platforms. And this had a huge impact on the work that we were doing. They were doing. I was not part of the team yet. And yes, so we return back to the original, and I want to add something here. I want to add that clearly there is kind of a dual perspective here. There is a perspective which is more liberal and says, oh, states should keep the internet open. The internet will be good for society. That was the perspective of the United States back then. And then there are other states that say, no, actually, you know what? I need to implement my own laws. I need to make sure that my laws are valid within my boundaries. And we can call this kind of cyber sovereignty. And these two are the two main factors by which countries either try to, help the free communication on the internet or try to block and impose their laws. And this is kind of the theoretical framework you can build on top of this. But then at the end of the day, let's remember, we are talking about people that are not able to communicate or to use the internet. And we are also talking about, in some cases, something that is very close, if not equal to, their freedom of speech. And so this is how kind of we can summarize the field and why it's called internet freedom. Let's now go into technical stuff. So let's go for discussing the internet shutdown. This is what happened, for example, in Egypt at the beginning of January 2011, 27th of January, I think. So as you know, the internet is a collection of networks that talk to each other. And it's not used to be that the networks coordinate in a way that, wait, is it okay? Am I, okay. I can't hear myself very well, that's why. Anyway, all good, perfect. So the internet is this collection of networks. And originally they had static rules to speak to each other, but modern internet use a protocol called BGP by which two different autonomous systems, as they are called, so for example, I don't know, Telecom Italia and Fastweb, can automatically connect. So this kind of censorship was very, very, very crude. What they did was basically, Egypt said, we need to take down the whole internet of the country. What do? We simply turned off the announcement of all the networks that we have. And this means that no one knows how to reach us, and communication became impossible. And this is what those charts show. And there is this paper that was made by this person called Alberto Dainotti, and he's a leading researcher in that. And now there is a project called IODA, which is the leading project in the world that shows you when something as a country shuts down completely the internet is happening. So that is a way to block the internet. Now, there are other ways, but those are a bit more specific. So to discuss them, we need to basically reason about reason like we were reasoning when we were writing our software. And let's start with this. Let's assume you're accessing a URL without encryption, so just HTTP. There are three things that happen. Each of them can fail or return some results. And each of them is a way in which you can censor someone. So let's go through them. You start that you have a domain name, Google, and you want to get an IP address. But how do you know it's the right IP address? How do you know the censorship system, the blocking system, is not faster than your packet traveling replies immediately and you get the wrong address? So this is a way in which things can go wrong. And what generally happens, and this is kind of what happens, for example, frequently in Europe, is that your ISP gives you a DNS resolver that gives you, by default, censored content, like the IP addresses are wrong. But how can you bypass this? You just configure your own DNS, right? Good. So let's assume you do that. I am the state, or I am an ISP. I want to prevent you, really prevent you from accessing stuff. What can I do? Well, I can act at the second step. I can add the rule somewhere that says you cannot connect to that IP address and port. And that's another way in which things can go wrong. And the third one, which is the one I hinted before, I can just inspect the content. So if you are sending the HTTP protocol and I see google.com and I don't want you to access Google, I can block you. So this is how blocking works for unencrypted traffic. For encrypted traffic, the history is slightly different. And the main change is this. The third step setups encryption. So after that, it's not really possible to get information about what's going on in an easy way. But when you set up an encrypted connection with TLS, you still need to say for which domain name you want to set up the connection. And this travels in clear text. So you can still block out of this. Okay, having said that, let's look at some cases, okay, of censorship. So yeah, this is a paper that you may want to read if you want to know a lot about how China is blocking DNS traffic. but I'm not going to go into the details of this. I'm just telling you my experience when I'm traversing the firewall, the so-called firewall. So you send a DNS query for, I don't know, Speck and .tech, for example, and the query traverses the firewall. And then it is allowed to continue, but the firewall, if Speck and tech is blocked, immediately sends a response. So the response that you get contains random IP addresses that are not working. And so if you use the first response that you get, you are blocked. What is funny is that if you wait, you can also collect the real response afterwards. And this is a way to distinguish this kind of censorship. Like you can wait, you can see if you have a second packet coming, and that second packet usually is the correct one. Sometimes there are 3 of them because there are multiple layers of defense trying to, inject. This is called DNS injection also, trying to inject responses. Okay, HTTP blocking, this is exactly what I was discussing before when I was here. It basically means that you can detect this by sending requests to whatever server and putting in the host header something that is potentially blocked. And if it is blocked, you will notice. And this is one of the first reports that my former organization wrote, and they discovered this. So in this context, in Palestine, they discovered there were squid transparent proxies that were deployed in there. And so when you were trying to access blocked content, you were getting pages saying you are not allowed to do this. Yeah, I'm doing some, yeah, good. With respect to TLS blocking, we kind of saw this in this specific context and several other contexts. I'm going to tell you about this case because it was quite interesting. So we were measuring, we had just invented or designed with other people a new way of checking whether there was some blocking based on the clear text field that you have when you're trying to create. So basically on this, okay? So what we did is say, let's take any server. I'm going to say this here because I need to indicate. Or no, I can use the laser. Okay, so you are the mobile phone and you're communicating with a server that is surely not censored, like example.com. And then how do you know if the field that you're sending when you create the channel is blocked or not? Well, you try twice. The first time, you send something in Nocus, like aaa.com or something like that. And the second time, you try to put in here the value that you think may cause blocking. And then you spot the differences. So that's how we were measuring this specific case of blocking. And this is kind of all of them except one. There is another specific case, which is throttling. Throttling happens when you are not blocked. So it's not that the communication stops. It's not that you receive, I don't know, a connection reset or something like that. You can actually go on and communicate. But there is some configuration in the network, which usually is probably a shaper or a policer, so something that drops packets, that causes you to go very slow. And in this study, Censor Planet, which is another organization that measures censorship, what they did was discover that in Russia, there was this targeting of Twitter domains. And this was twitter.com and t.co. And then what they realized is that whatever server you're speaking to, if you're using the specific value for setting up the TLS connection, then your ability to communicate was like limited to a very, very, very slow speed. Now, what is it that you see if you're a person in a country that implements any of this? So in the case of DNS, what you see is that your browser does not load the resource. oftentimes it loads another page, and sometimes we see this in Italy, that says, because of this law, your resource cannot be loaded. When you are blocked at HTTP level, it's sometimes similar. Some other times you try to load the page and it says, we can't load the page. For TLS, the most common cases is that you try to load it and there is an error, or you try to load a web page and what you got is like nothing, timeout. It goes on and on and on and eventually gives up. What happens for throttling is that when you are loading, I don't know, your Twitter home, all those tweets load very slowly, very, very slowly. The images load very slowly, and eventually JavaScript gives up because there is not enough bandwidth to work. So this is a different way. There is not an explicit indication of error. It really just looks like your network is terrible. Okay. Having said this, I wanted to briefly touch upon censorship circumvention. Now, I told you before that there are several ways that you can hide your identity, such as Tor. But in general, protocols such as the Tor protocol or any protocol have a signature. So if you are looking at the packets that flow through the network, you're able to say, oh, this is Tor, because like they basically have some characteristics. And so there was this idea for quite some time to do a kind of transformation that was transforming the Tor traffic, or any traffic you wanted to hide, into fully encrypted traffic. And this means basically that if you look at the packets, now you don't have anymore the same timing between packets. Those are changed, and the content of the packets is very random. And this worked for quite some time. It's called OBS4. It was like it's still a very, very good protocol for hiding yourself and for VPNs or for Tor to not be detected and blocked. However, this paper that was very interesting discovered that the Great Firewall of China was now able to measure the entropy of the packets, and because fully encrypted traffic has very high entropy, it was possible for them to say, oh, this is not a normal protocol, let's do something with it. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game to some extent, and I wanted to mention also this part. I'm going to conclude now by telling you about what happens at the back office. So let's examine this case. This was the case of an it was like a pro-woman rights website, a global website, and this website happened to be promoting abortion medicines, and there were ways for you to get those medicines. And there was an administrative institution in Spain that was overviewing drugs in Spain. And basically they decided with an administrative procedure that the site should be blocked. Now, what happened is that it was blocked, and in fact we measured it was blocked, but the website fought back. And this became a case and arrived at the Supreme Court of Spain. And eventually what happened is that it was ruled that it was not possible for an administrative entity to order the blocking of a website, the entire website, which was not proportionate, and that was harming the freedom of speech. And because of these reasons, eventually this case was dismissed. But my point here stands. So the internet moves fast, and in general, states want to really make sure that their law or their administrative decisions are applied to the internet. And so there are new ways and mechanisms by which they do this that bypass going to court and fighting in a long trial. A similar case can be said for Russia. Now, this is another report that we worked on. I was still part of the team back then, and describes what changed during the first year of the conflict in Ukraine. But the really interesting part here, in my opinion, for this kind of narrative is that, sure, the things went south with the beginning of the war. There was an escalation of censorship. Laws were passed that really made it more difficult to do many things online, and it was surely worse. But the thing is that if you look into the history, it started long time ago. So there were initially only court cases. Then they started to have to give powers to administrative bodies. They have a body called Roskomsvoboda, which, sorry, oh my God, Roskomnadzor. Roskomsvoboda is an organization that collaborated with us. So Roskomnadzor, which is the authority to control the communication in Russia, which basically has the authority to block several websites sidestepping court. And there are up to 16 other organizations in administrative organizations that are related to the government that also have the power to cooperate with Roskomnadzor to do this. So again, my point is still the same. We are seeing that there are more and more ways to sidestep what is a normal court procedure to determine whether the human rights, such as the right to express yourself, are violated or not, and this becomes something automatic. And we can see also this for France. This is another very interesting report in which there is a legal analysis, and then it goes into explaining how blocking works. So I will spoiler you that blocking is mostly DNS blocking in France. But what is interesting here is that not only there are these administrative institutions that can block stuff, such as there is this HADOP institution that can block on copyright grounds, but that they have a very clear, yeah, you can go to court, but they kind of have a flow chart. And this flow chart is such that they can quickly order the blocking of something, and then there is a procedure to fight back. And there is a person that is responsible for checking what, in this case, Adobe can do and other agency can do. And this person has the power to say, no, what you're doing is actually violating the freedom of expression, for example. And there have been 2 or 3 cases that I remember of where actually this person with this responsibility brought the other party to court to fight them because they didn't want to back down. Okay, so that was kind of what happens in the back office, so to speak, when they want to block something. Now, we're at the end of the presentation. What I wanted to mention is that at the beginning, when we started working on this field, it was possible to check for blocking of content, and it was possible to block content, and it was very easy. And it was also possible to kind of, for us, it was possible to try to trigger filters when sending clear text requests. The advent of encryption and the advent of services with login, or where what you see depends on your login, made it very difficult for us, which means that at a given point, what we did in the Uni project was that we focused on blocking at the network level because it was not possible anymore to really focus on everything. And there are other projects that I didn't mention for the sake of, let's say, brevity, that actually try to answer questions like, is my Facebook feed censored? Is there any decision made by Facebook, for example, to prevent me from seeing some content? But we basically never really looked into this. What we did was mostly looking at packets and the content of packets and automatic rules that were blocking something. So with this, I will leave you with 2 pieces of information. So if you want to know more about this topic, there is this great website, censorbib.nimity.ch. In any case, the slides will be available, which is maintained by Philip Winter, a researcher, and he has all the possible papers on this topic, so you can really read everything. The second part, the second concept I wanted to mention is that in 2020, we ran this during the pandemic, when we were all in lockdown. We ran this measurement village, it was all remote. And if you look at those videos, there are all the projects that really matter in this field, and they are explained in much more detail and length that I am able to do right now. And with this, if you have questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you, Simone. Questions are flowing, so I'm gonna ask the most interesting ones, but then, of course, if you have more, go and meet him in front of a beer. So, first one,
Yeah.
you showed a number of methods. Which of these methods have been adopted to shut down the internet in Gaza recently?
Which of those? Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
I
of the
did a
methods
mistake.
you presented.
This is
If
a
you know, of
difficult
course.
question for me because, like, I left the team in 2024, so I was not following very well. What I would recommend you do to answer this question is you go on the uni website and you check for newer reports and you read what they published.
Okay, thank you. Well, what's your? This is maybe not related to censorship on a
Oh,
website level, but more on the user verification. So, what's your take on using speed or similar services to verify user's age for websites or porn? It's something that is being discussed a lot.
um,
It can be your personal take.
yeah, my personal take is that it's not a very good idea. And you need to be very careful in making sure you're not leaking information. And anyway, you are just starting an arms race because people that really want to see that content will just use VPNs or Tor, which means then you will freak out about that and you will start like, cracking down on VPNs or Tor. So it feels like a bit pointless, I guess, and not sure if it's very well thought out, but I should need to read more. But yeah, I don't think it's a great idea.
Okay. What do you say about chat control?
Oh, uh, uh, right. So let's see. Do I understand correctly? The chat control is this rule that like end-to-end decryption is banned,
Yeah,
etc.
what Europe has been doing right now,
Yeah,
this law that has been probably
yeah.
stopped at this
Okay,
point.
yeah, this is a good, okay, very good question. I would say we need to fight against this because it's very scary. And like the thing is that we sometimes think like we are in the 700 sipping tea in New England and we think like, yeah, it's all good. But actually our society is very complex, very interrelated, very technology dependent. So it's very easy to create conditions that can cause problems for us. So we should actually, I guess, fight it as much as we can, like as a civil society, obviously.
A number of questions related to different ways of censorship. So, what do you think are the dangers of the evolution of Italian tools for controlling navigation, like the Piracy Shield, since it's easy to choose what to block?
Um, yeah, like I would say that um, I believe like my point that states eventually want to exert their power no matter what is probably kind of valid. And so maybe it's not for political reasons, maybe it's just because people like you don't want people to string you into or whatever, but at the end of the day like they are trying to do something similar. And also it's very interesting in a negative way how sometimes those tools backfire. So you probably remember that Google Drive was not working because they tried to block this. So it's a very complex problem, and yeah, I don't know.
It was it
I'm
was
not in favor.
it was related to the Pezzotto, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, People are asking if a VPN is sufficient for most types of censorship.
Okay, this is a very good question. Um, when you're using a VPN, the signature of your traffic gives away the protocol that you're using. So if you're using WireGuard, and you use a packet inspector as like the ISP, you really see, oh, this is WireGuard. If you use OpenVPN, it's the same. If you use Tor, it's the same. So the thing is, when you want to make your tool resistant to this kind of identification and termination, what you do is try to put these kind of filters I was talking about between like the client then there is the filter, then inside the network you see something else, and then there is another filter on the other hand. OBS4, which is the technology I mentioned before, is very good for looking like randomness. But there are other ways in which you can morph yourself. You can try to look like HTTP3, which is a protocol quite used today, or Quick, which is kind of the engine behind that. And the technology is named Mask. I think it's used by Apple relays, probably. So the point being, you can try to look like something else, and you better hope that that something else is something important that is not blocked. So this is kind of like obfuscation circumvention game. That's like the technical term.
Okay, thank you. There are many more questions. Maybe some people are pointing out that if they remember correctly, starting with TLS 1.3, the TLS hello encrypts the FQDN. So the
that's ECH,
okay.
encrypted client hello, I think.
Okay.
I had another name before. Yeah, it's interesting. That's true. The thing is that it's not very deployed. I think Cloudflare is allowing it, and yeah, I couldn't enter these details, but you need to fetch the data using encrypted DNS, such as DNS over TLS or DNS over HTTPS. That's one of the last thing I did, trying to measure whether those are blocked or not. So you are kind of moving the problem, and this is good, obviously, but it's still, if you block DNS over HTTPS or over TLS, then you, again, cannot communicate. So you're trying to move the problem. It's, as I said, arms race.
Yeah. Okay. Final question. How can you distinguish TLS throttling and just bad server management coverage by, for example, X in a certain country?
Yeah. This is, I can answer this question, but I need to speak for 3 minutes.
Okay. Whoever's interested in this topic, head over to Simone in front of a beer, and he has like 30 minutes to cover it.
Yeah, bring 3 beers. Maybe it's better.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Simone, and welcome back, Julia. A small break. We catch on some breath of air, and yeah, as you were, Christian.
Break with show.
Okay, you never get to the point where I know all your names and if you're making a damage. So, as you noticed on our website, apart from Neutech Park, we also had Telmekom. And you might remember this guy, Tommaso Montefusco, who, Princiso, was the first person to get the #1 ticket ever of Speck&Tech, just to tell you. Last April, Telmekom was the sponsor of our big event in the auditorium of Lettere. It was great, and we had a great time. They brought some robots. They brought a lot of swag. The focaccia was amazing, and they decided to sponsor again. So, Sergio, come over.
Thank you. I'm really happy that we sponsor some good communities and good events, and I will try to be very short with this call to action. And as our logo says, the future is easy. I will say the future is Speck&Tech, because we are speaking here. And I would like to connect to the walls which we are talking today. And I think the internet was built to connect us generally. But we are keeping finding the new ways to build the walls around it. And the walls are not the bricks, are most the code, the policies, the power. The power and the policies and code comes most from the governments which try to regulate, as Simone has says, to conceal the stuff and things. On the other side, they come also from companies with the terms of services, with the restriction and stuff. And I think that the ethics, which is also based mostly in the free and open source software, is in technology, is not an optional, it's a foundational. Because with that, free and open source software remind us that the openness is a moral choice. It's not a technical one, okay? And at the Telmekom, we try to stay with communities that champion openness, ethics, and innovation. Because only when companies choose to support technology and dialogue instead of building walls, everyone wins. Okay, that's our call to action. We will be at the SFScon. You can find us in Hacking Village. We have really interesting story on the hackathon. The challenge is really interesting. It has to do with the robots and stuff. And we will have in the main court on Telmekom stand. I will be also speaking on the AI and ethics and something with the municipalities and free software. So please visit us at the SFScon. Thank you. Let's open the floor and no walls, but new ideas. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sergio, and come meet him after the event for a chat, or meet him in Bolzano as well. Look, Julia, if you're interested, and if you want to find job opportunities again on our website, there are also job opportunities from Telmekom and from more of the companies that are supporting Speck&Tech. Spoilerini time. Spoilerone.
Time for your calendar to take out of your pocket, because the date is soon, quite soon.
Quite soon, 9 of December 2025, our last event directly at Muse, a big night, which means 300 plus people, so hurry up. We're gonna have an event that's gonna be, I would say, ambitious. It's called Rest in Pixels, because we're gonna be talking about digital death. So what happens after we die? What happens to our data once we are no longer here? And we have a lawyer here, actually, so whoa. Which actually means when some of our familiar, some of the people we love are no longer with us, how can we access their photos, their bank accounts, their wallet, whatever it's linked to a person that is no longer there at the moment is kind of a nightmare, both from a legal point of view and from a technical point of view. And we're going to tackle this topic with two great speakers, Giovanni Ziccardi, who's a professor at the University of Milan and published tons of books about the topic, and Mattia Pifani, who's actually a hacker, expert in cybersecurity, who basically hacks, and he will show something, devices of dead people for their family to retrieve data for the benefit and for the sake of their families. It's going to be something, as you can imagine, very difficult from a moral, from an ethical point of view, but we think it's high time to discuss about this, since San Bernardino was almost 10 years ago, and from that point on we didn't make many progresses. So we're gonna meet you there. The tickets will be out tomorrow, or maybe they're out already somewhere in the dark web.
300, but they run out really fast.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. All right. Second talk on stage, Carlo Piana, welcome.
Thank you. I need it clear. Thank you. What a crowd. Thank you for having me. By way of introduction, I'm a lawyer, an IT lawyer. I do technology and law. I am a long time, 25 plus, digital freedoms advocate. There's a big noise on my mic. And I have been General Counsel to the Free Software Foundation Europe for more than 10 years. I'm currently board member of the Open Source Initiative, and I've been a chair. And yeah, I'm doing a lot of things in this field. As a lawyer, you know, the saying goes that if you only have a hammer, you tend to see all problems as nails. As a lawyer, I tend to see everything as legal issues. But fortunately for you and for me, law is not what people think. Say, a piece of paper you have to dig your eyes and try and find the law is society. Without law, there is no society, and without society, there is no law. So in order to understand and foresee the future evolution of the law, you need to understand society. And unfortunately, or fortunately, in technology, things are moving so fast that you cannot cope with that. And you need to look forward, much forward in the future, because the future is now. And everything that you decide now will impact on the future, much more than it used to be. And this is why you need to have a deep understanding of society to make laws, to interpret laws, and to apply laws. A guy, Lawrence Lessig, 1999, said, code is law. And he means that. And today is even more so. We need IT to even access, to have, to exercise our rights. We need computers to file our tax, to ask for an appointment, to everything. And so if you have a right and the right is not encoded rightly in the system, you cannot exercise it. You can ask yourself, is law code? Well, not exactly. If we were on Matrix, you could write a law and the law would apply by itself, by magic, because you control. Of course, code can be buggy, but the law is bugged by design. So law is not code. So the equivalence doesn't work both ways, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately, because otherwise you will not have lawyers. You say, hey, yeah, come on, yeah. No, nobody ever say that. But lawyers, of course, for themselves, not for other lawyers. So if code is law, uh, does to code applies what applies to law? For instance, law for working law must be public, must be known by everybody. There is no such a thing as a secret law. And for software, yes, there is such a thing as secret law, secret software, yes. Law must be impartial. That means not that equal situation must be treated equally and different must be treated differently. With software, we're not that. So if for proprietary software especially, you have people treated differently. You pay, you don't pay. You can use for this and not for that. And law must be available to everyone who applies to. So if you have a right, you can go to court and apply for this right. You can claim this right. You can demand to have this right. For code, this doesn't work that way, unless it's open source. Open source, of course, you know, of course, what open source is. Arguably, does deliver these freedoms, these basically freedoms. You can change the code if you're able. I'm sort of not able, but if you are able, you can change the code, you can inspect the code, and you can use for everything, and so on and so forth. But I should be using a past form, because these days things are much different. When open source promised to deliver its benefits, and it has delivered a lot of benefits. Open source is immensely successful, is immensely important to the entire chain of technology, much more than people would think. But this is not the situation anymore. We don't have, much of the workload is not on my computer, and it's not on something I control, it's on something other people are controlling. And this has been a long trend. Every workload, most workloads go on the internet, on the cloud. On the top of it, AI. In the future, many computer, many software application will be more or less, to large or lesser extent, be on powered by AI or working with AI. So today, open source has a very different meaning. It's not the thing it used to be. We need to go back to the basics, because open source is a means to an end. Open source is not the object. The objective is not the target. The target is the freedom that open source delivers. And we have to rethink the technology in order to have and keep and enhance the freedoms that open source delivers for the software you have on your computer. You must have the same things in AI, you must have the same things in cloud. And this is tremendously difficult, because with computer, you have the code, you have the computer, you have everything you need. You need to have knowledge, but then you have everything. With computer, is different. You must run through other people. Everybody remembers this was the slogan of Google back in the days. Everybody forgot. So it's a problem of trust. Whom you trust. You are forced to trust, if you're using a service, those around the code, because you don't have any way to control it. So you must trust them. But fortunately, there are other people, the controllers. But again, you must trust the controller do the right thing. They know what to do, and they have power to do, and they have the right interest. Well, a conflict of interest is a good thing, because different interests keep each other in check. But it's so much an ancient problem that there is a Latin quote, quis custodiet ipsos custodes, who will control the controllers themselves. And you can on and on and add controllers and controllers and controllers and controllers. It's a never-ending story. Actually, the best way we have to do this is have check and balances, and which is the fundamental way democracy works. You vote some people, but voting is not enough. You have technical people, you have governments, you have parliament, you have civil society, you have the third sector, you have people that keep powers in check. So, this is a battle of power between governments. Of course, governments are always hunger for power. It is in their nature. It's not their second nature, it's their nature, the quest for power. But not only governments, but also the other guys. Platforms. Nowadays, platforms are equal powers to states. Many of them have a turnover that compares favorably with decently sized states. So when they speak one in front of each other. Sometimes people go to the President of the United States and say, oh, okay. This is the kind of situation, and we must trust these people. And we are in this situation. They want power. What do we want? We don't know what we want. We must learn what we must want. Because people in general don't know what they want. They know they have basic needs: safety, health, a job probably, housing, care, children care, education, whatever. But the way to achieve that, that's another problem. That is where law comes in. That's where the politics come in. That's what policies come in. We want to have governments, states, and super states and whatever to keep in check those powers and act as a balance by way of legislation, by way of regulation, by way of checking, by way of implementing the laws. But unfortunately, this is a tremendously difficult job. It's very easy to screw up. And especially, and don't get me wrong, I am implying that these people, all they want to do the good, to good platforms want just to make business, which is good, and governments want to do the good of their people. But how many times we have heard we're doing it for the kids? Who doesn't want to protect our kids? Who wants child pornography? Who wants slavery, exploitation? Who wants that? Nobody, of course. So pursuing the good of the kids is a good thing, of course. It is, undeniably. But sometimes when the state intervenes, they create the opposite of the goal they have. Sometimes they intervene and they increase the power of platforms, and collateral damages can invariably occur. You have to minimize them. Avoiding is almost impossible. I have a few cases. These are not it's not a complete list. It's just randomly chosen. You can have state mandated insecurity, backdoors, insecurity in certain. You cannot sell. This was the way encryption worked in the days when it started working, because US prohibited exportation of strong encryption. They only wanted, for the rest of us, weak encryption. There was a guy in New Zealand, the founder of Ubuntu, who made a fortune by doing a strong encryption. But how many times there is a quest for introducing state backdoors into encryption, and this is so bad idea. I make in the slides the example of TSA, but it's just a visual example. But if there is an insecurity, somebody is going to exploit it. Period. State-mandated surveillance. Everybody remembers check control? Of course, we just spoke about it. And the end of end-to-end encryption. And for what? For surveilling, of course. But surveillance is what the bad guys want to do, the bad states want to do on their population. And we are giving platforms the right, no, the obligation to inspect the traffic that goes on just for fun. It's a very good, but it's not a good idea. Fortunately, we are avoiding that because Germany realized that this is not a good idea and had a veto. But in Europe was directed to the direction, like China. Identification, we just spoke about it. Mandating identification, stopping anonymity. It's a good idea, because who wants people behind a curtain of anonymity to slander, diffuse false information, create damage behind anonymity? But these can work in our society, but as soon as we start mandating identification for using the services, also other less democratic countries will say, oh, we're doing that as well. Of course, and suddenly you would you will stop civil disobedience, dissent in less democratic states, because nobody could use anonymous services, because that will apply everywhere. Sometimes even not just the governments, but even the business demand things which are against their own interest. And this is an example how demanding measure against the platforms, the wrong ones, can create problems. Before the recent reform of copyright in Europe, there was a quest, and there was laws in Germany, there was laws in Spain, were newspapers and magazines demanding a license for publishing non-copyrightable snippets of information that Google used for making a service and making a lot of money. So they said, we want a share of this money. So they implemented a law whereby Google and others had to shell a fraction of the money by having a license. And Google decided, oh, you know, who cares? We are not taking a license. We are not paying anything. So they didn't get that money. And Google stopped indexing their content, so they didn't have the traffic. And so advertisement was zero. They sued in Spain, they sued Google for abuse of dominant position because they refused to receive a license for content they didn't use, which wasn't but the problem is that this caused, of course, Google said, who cares? I have too much power. I don't even bother asking the license. Go and screw yourselves. But there were other platforms hit by the same provisions, the very smaller competition to Google, specialized, local, they went out of business. So instead of having Google paying money, Google had more power and of course more money, and the newspaper didn't get any money. And of course, you know how the situation is going for this kind of industry. The good and the bad and the ugly of recent legislation. How is European Union faring, scoring in terms of the new legislation? You know that recently, it's about 5 years, Europe has started implementing new laws for digital, a new digital package, so to speak. And they did something good for me. That's my evaluation, my estimate. I'm also an antitrust lawyer, so I see DMA, Digital Markets Act, is a good thing. Data Act, they are good. AI and DSA are so and so. There is bad and good inside. And there is a very, very ugly thing, CRA. CRA is a good thing, but done wrongly in the first place. And I will explain it very soon. DMA is, as I said, the Digital Market Act. So it basically it takes the decisions by the European Commission and then by the European Court of Justice on antitrust, abuse of dominant position, like the Microsoft case. I've been one of the lawyers in the Microsoft case, Google, Meta, and every time a platform uses their network effect, their essential facility to stifle competition, abuse of dominant competition, so avoiding competition, there's a provision of the treaties that prohibits that. And they have basically taken the jurisprudence and made it a law. So it's quite good. And it only impacts gatekeepers. So instead of having a law for everybody, only for the tops. In terms of size, in terms of turnover, and in terms of power. So this is a law that doesn't affect me, or if not positively, it affects only certain things. 11, I think. And Apple, of course, has sued European Union before the European Court of Justice because they said, oh, you are just introducing insecurity because you are forcing us to accept other marketplaces we don't control, so you are creating insecurity. And Free Software Foundation Europe is challenging that in court today. But just to give you a hint of how this can create problems in terms of opening up the market, lowering the barriers to entry, reducing the walled garden effect. Data Act is another good legislation. I will not expand on this. Your data is yours. You have access to the data you create by using devices, going around, using light meters, whatever. They are pro-competition, and competition for me, as an antitrust lawyer, is in principle very good. So, A+. C- for CRA. CRA, I mean, the intention of CRA is very good. We are software is insecure, software is eating the world, and people are weaponizing insecurities. The bad people, the bad states, enemies, are weaponizing insecurities to create mayhem, to create problems to us. So the idea that software and software enabled products must be secure by design is a good thing. Mandating liability for insecure is an idea that for general products was there in the late 80s. If the product is not safe, is not has not the qualities that you would expect, you are liable. So the same applies to software, and the software that goes into the devices and software itself must done correctly. You must evaluate the risk, establish, and you are liable if you're not doing your homework. Okay, manufacturer is liable. Those who making this are liable. But there is one point. What happens with open source, with people not selling stuff, just maybe selling stuff, but making them available for free on the internet, and people, you have XKCD, you know XKCD, the cartoon. There is a very famous, and these days often, too often, used in presentation. I'm not using it. Thank me. Okay. That's the guy in Nebraska holding a piece that keeps everything. This is the target for this. This is the guy who say, I'm done. Fuck yourself. I'm closing shop. I've read people, and people told me I'm not doing. Even after the CRA was amended, because it was amended. Luckily, it's a big W. Free Software Foundation, Open Forum Europe, Linux Foundation, Eclipse Foundation, had some intelligence that this was being enacted, and shouted, this is not going to, this is impossible, this is a disaster. And some people corrected, made an amendment which exempted open source from this legislation unless you are monetizing. So shifting from making to who is selling. So, but this is just to say that beware of what you wish, because you can have it. That's a curse. And that is it's a lesson learned for us. This is I come to action, to what the civil society should do. Because those making the laws are not big guys, are well-intended, as I said. But they listen to, not to everybody, listen to lobbyists. And people who have the money and the power to send lobbyists. People who send lobbyists to government, people to the parliament, people who send lobbyists or experts in the standard making bodies. We don't have the money. We, the open science, don't. I have 2 head counts, full-time, and 2 half counts. And we cannot just be everywhere. And we don't have the money, and even if we have very, very good people who can do the job, they have other things to do. We cannot just distract them from doing important things just for this, because it's impossible. Fortunately, CRA, after this, mandates the standard setting bodies to listen to us, to actively reach out to us and say, we want to have your opinion. Otherwise, we should have membership and people sitting on there all day long waiting for these standards that interest us. In this case, the law mandates that they are listening to us, to civil society, to open source. Actually, it's the first time in the legislation open source is so expressly made an actor. This is good. From bad things sometimes come good things. But this is just one emergency. The next one can be tomorrow, and it's a disaster. So there are a very, very short list of things that I would like and would love to see enacted. The first thing is explainability. AI explainability is already there, but it must be enhanced, must be uh, uh, algorithmic opacity must be removed. Not by mandate, but anytime a platform provides you some services or provides you some illegal content, they are protected by a law, which is a good law, that says that you have no duty to monitor what. But if you're impartial, if you're not generating or controlling the provision of this content, you must be in a situation, it must be in a position to explain why this is just a technical and you're not tweaking the algorithm for getting more traffic, more control, more power. And if you're not able to explain, you must be liable. So reinverting the burden of proof. And this must be auditable. So there must be some way I can come and check if what you are saying is true. Of course, there is a black box analysis we can do, but this is not enough. And these kind of audits cost a lot of money, a lot of money. So hundreds and hundreds of, if not millions. Make encryption a receiver right. I am so shocked that encryption is seen as a bad thing. Encryption must be a civil right. I must be able to protect my secret. I must be able to protect my communication as much as my mail, this name mail is protected, and so my communication electronic, how many have sent a letter in the last 10 years? I probably have sent 2, and I'm a lawyer. So this must be a civil right. And this is another list of things which may be of minor importance in the overall picture, but is important for civil society. The right to tinker, the right to open things and not not losing the statutory warranty, as we have done with telephones. The right to fix. And there are some initiatives to enhance the right to fix, but there is no overall universal right to fix your stuff, the stuff you have bought. The right to find out, to explore, to reverse engineer. Because there is a secret, and trying to find out what works in your computer, it can be a criminal offense. And protecting white hats, those who go and find insecurities and do responsible disclosure, of course, everything, but these must be protected as a thing which serves the society. Instead, I have friends who were on trial for inspecting, and auditing, and revealing the insecurities of a political party, unfortunately. And what he got instead of a thank you for telling us and making us able to fix, pressing criminal charges. This is not sufficient. This is a starting, but at least this could protect us as a society from further damages in case the next thing happens. We need a new ACDL. No, I'm joking. No, I'm joking. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. No, I'm joking. This is this is the opposite of what we need. We don't need, they say, even need training. We need culture. We need information. We need to understand things, not to be like monkeys being able to press B to have bold. This is the way information technology has been thought, and that, don't get me started. I'm deleting it. I will delete from PDF. It's too rude. We must know what we must want. As I said, we must learn what we must want. And the first thing is participate. This is a rant of an old fart, because civil participation is declining. The average age of the people is my age, which tends to be too high, because we don't have energy, we don't have the ideas. We need more people, more youngsters. And I'm glad that is in the room. There is a lot of young people, also some gray hair, but yeah, okay. But people must take action, because this is something that builds our future. You don't just sit and say, oh, how unlucky we are. We must learn, actively learn, because without knowing, there is no action. If you know, you can take action. If you don't know, you don't even have an idea that you have a problem. And vote. It's the only power we have, to vote. I don't mean I've been candidate to European Parliament as a member, failing, of course, miserably. But of course, but I'm not saying to vote one party, left, right, up, but no. But consider the attitude to these things that I've told you as one important thing. Because people don't bother. People say, oh, immigration, or say taxes, which are important things, but these are important things too. Because these are the tool that makes democracy work. Speak up, tell your people. Because there is a lot of pressure to use, for instance, Instagram. No, Instagram is sort of, but WhatsApp. I don't want to use WhatsApp, but why, if I have a daughter at school, I'm forced to use WhatsApp to receive a news communication from the school? This cannot be true. This cannot be tolerated. Because you cannot force me to use a platform if I don't want to. If I decide it, okay, it's fine. It's me deciding, but you cannot force me to. And speak up, protest if you're forced to do something you don't want to. And of course, you have to thank these people of Speck&Tech. These are very good things, and these are precisely the kind of events that will make me happy to spend time and try with my small forces to convince people to take action. So, from the deepest of my heart, thank you very much for listening. I'm available for legal stuff, some legal stuff.
Thank you so much. This talk served a lot of food for thought, and we have some questions to highlight the discussion even more. Okay, if something like chat control passes, hypothetically speaking, how much could someone be in trouble for running its own end-to-end encrypted communication system, hypothetically speaking?
Oh, that depends. Depends on how it's implemented. But if it's this is for platforms. But I remember that 15 years ago there was a law in Italy that it didn't prohibit per se using encryption, but it said if you exchange music and it's encrypted, you are twice as much liable. Then it was for peer-to-peer encryption like Napsters. So it can be a problem. As I said, you want to have the right to have encryption in private communication, and if you don't fight for that, if you don't care of you can not care, you don't care for your rights are nothing. So take action. But this check control is very, very, very dangerous, yes. If it passes, heaven forbid.
Okay, thank you. Second one, I'm a big supporter of self-hosting. What's your take on that?
I do some self-hosting myself. I actually am, for instance, I'm not using Google Photos anymore. I'm using Image, which is self-hosted in my computer via a Tailscale, which is a WireGuard VPN. And of course, I host my own website. And this is a way of avoiding the overpower of the platforms, but it's hard. It's not for everyone. I'm sort of a geek, but I understand that for many they don't bother enough and they don't have knowledge. And there are instruments. And it needs a little bit of effort, but it's a way forward to avoid the overpower of these platforms. Yes,
So
I'm all in favor, of course. And and it used to be there used to be a tendency, perhaps it comes back again, of federated services, not having all the eggs in one basket, having more services cooperating together. This is the kind of cloud computing, if you want, that can have more competition based on standards, based on APIs. This is the way to do.
okay, so arm yourself of effort and knowledge is the key. What do you think about the various countries which are migrating their public infrastructures to free and open source software alternatives to commonly used software?
I think well. And fortunately, Italy, at least on paper, is one of the first and with the most extreme legislation favoring open source, because we have Article 68, Article 69 of the computer, sorry, CAD, Code of Digital Administration, sorry, and they mandate that one of the choices in procuring software must be open source. Of course, one is cloud, with a lot of problems, and the code of the public administration must be made public. I mean, if you create software or you buy software, I mean, not the software, and you're a public administration, you must put it online, public on a platform as open source. This is quite good. I mean, of course, there are resistances. I advise a few public administration, including the neighboring administration of province of Bolzano, in this respect, actually. But it's something that creates an opportunity to use more open source software. And where else than the public administration is the place where to use open source?
Okay, there are many questions that are popping out. We answer. So if you have any other curiosities, just ask to the speaker during the networking. We have a few time for a couple of them. What are the chances that the incoming block imposed by Italy's Agicom on porn website will be fought in court? It was highly voted.
Uh, well, the blocking is effective. The blocking is troublesome per se, of course, and giving identity, I cover that, is a bad idea. And that works also for porn sites, yes. And there is a technical way to do it with privacy, not always in speed, because it's not a good way, but there are similar ways to only reveal or certify your age without revealing any data of you. So technically it's possible to age verification without giving up your identity, which is a sensible thing, of course. It reveals a lot of things. But it's going to be effective. I fear that if it's effective, it's dangerous. If it's not effective, it's laughable. But either way, it creates a bad example. So this is already damage, and the damage is already done. And piracy, shield, this is another hugely bad thing done. Bad idea, implemented abysmally.
And last question. Have you seen the controversy between Google and FFmpeg? What is your opinion on this?
Now, Google again. I know Google and FFmpeg, but I don't know what the clash is.
Me neither.
If somebody, because
yeah,
I'm also into media codec formats, AV1, VP8, those all the things, 8264, 8265. It's part of my job, but and of course I'm using fan of FFmpeg, but to say I know that are one against each other.
I don't know.
I think
The author and the other 5 friends who voted, if you can.
It's not me who asked the question, but the beef between FFmpeg and Google is that Google is finding many security vulnerabilities in
ah,
FFmpeg, and they are demanding that they fix it, but FFmpeg is open source, they don't have money, and so they are saying, like, what should we do with that?
okay. Now this is a non-stop, not this particular, but this is a recurrent theme. Um, Google doing things algorithmically, including shutting down or demonetizing content providers for things which are completely legal. This is a huge problem. This goes on from abuse of power to the maximalism of IP protection and an algorithmic decision made without a person involved, and everybody having complain against Google or fight for. I have experienced that the decision they made are the quality of the decision they're making are declining over the time, probably because they increase those too, to be honest. But yeah, this is always a huge problem. It's a right, but a right using too much can be abused, and this creates a lot of problem. This is a problem that CRA would create if not done properly.
Okay, there are some more questions, but maybe you can answer them in front of.
Buy
of
me a beer and I will tell.
Of course,
everything.
yes. And thank you again.
I love.
All right. Wrapping up the night. Thank you, Carlo, for the talk. A couple of logistic things. First, we're going to have Speck again. After some time, we have been focaccia with Speck. This time it's pure Speck and a lot of cheese. And of course, we're going to have carrots and veggie and celiac options. Also, if you are not into specific things that you cannot eat, just go find volunteers, organizers of Speck&Tech, ask. We have some stuff secured for people with specific needs, so just ask. We might have some news about this as well for the last event of the year, but we don't say anything at the moment. Together with the food, there's going to be some very great beers. So as we said, we partnered with Brewdog, and we're going to have not one, but two, but four, but three, but four different types of beers, from ranging from IPA to lagers. And yeah, find the one you like the most, enjoy, and cheers. Final remarks. First, everything you've had tonight, from the talks to the event to the space, from the beers and the food later on, is offered for free from Speck&Tech Association. We of course, don't produce money, but yet. But you can help us in a number of ways. First, you can donate. Second, you can get our merchandise. We have, I guess, five T-shirts, around 5 T-shirts left from last year. They're extreme high quality. You can see them there. They're perfect for hiking, and right now, and 50% lana merino, which means if you're going in the mountains, especially now that it's getting kind of chilly, this is the one you're looking for. They're amazing. They're going to last like decades. And we're going to have also the T-shirts for 2025. And we are getting close to the end of 2025, which means that time is running. And again, we have like a few tens of T-shirts that are still left. we are not gonna publish them anymore, which means they are unique pieces. And in 2029 or in 2057, when you're gonna be back at Speck&Tech, you will say, "Yeah, I was there
I
in
was there.
25." Yeah, yeah. As it's happening now with the people wearing the T-shirt from 2017. I've seen some in the room, or those with 2020, 2018. It's nice. You're showing how people are still passionate, close to the association along the years.
So last night to secure one of the previous editions. Okay, last thing, as Franz was saying, we actually don't produce money yet. So the association is running over sponsors, but especially your donation. We have this algorithm, extremely precise, to inspire you and suggest you how much you should donate to help Speck&Tech running for many years. So if you want to donate kindly, €1 you pay back for your beer, €2 you pay for the beer and the food. If you are extremely generous tonight and you're starting to warm up for Christmas gifts, you can pay €5 and help your friend to not starve. And of course, we accept any kind of money and anything you want, from cash to card.
There's the cassa there at the entrance. Before leaving the room, just pass by Samuel and say thank you. All right.
Get your stickers and
Yeah.
I think we're done.
Actually, we had a slide now, but it got removed. So we say hi to Mama and Papa at home and whoever is there watching on YouTube.